Michael Andretti, a racing legend in the United States, has been on the front foot in his efforts to gain support for an F1 entry, including months of lobbying in the paddock. But interest in Andretti becoming the grid's 11th team, which requires clearance from both the FIA and F1, has been lukewarm at best, with multiple people like Toto Wolff and other team principals even lashing out at Andretti for bringing nothing to the table. It is thought that the vast majority of F1 teams are opposed to sharing the prize money with an additional entry. Their reservations stem from doubts over whether the existing $200 million dilution fund Andretti would be required to pay is sufficient to reflect the increased worth of an F1 entry following the sport's popularity surge. That's why some teams are heavily trying to keep more competitors out of the sport, as there's only so much to give out. Let's dive into some financial details. Well, Ferrari will be earning the largest amount of the Formula One revenue share. F1 has an unusual revenue sharing scheme, and we'll investigate how much money is available. And after this, you'll know why Ferrari received the most, and why some teams don't want to split the prize money with an 11th or 12th team on the grid. The expected revenue for F1 in 2023 is $1.38 billion, which will be split among teams and other shareholders. It's one of the world's most lucrative sporting competitions. The prize money is distributed by the CVC, the parent company of the Formula One group. The revenue from a single race might range from $100 million to $140 million. Meanwhile, Formula One revenue is increasing year after year. So, how is all of this money distributed across the teams? First, the prize money fund receives 50% of the entire money earned by the CVC. This money is distributed among the constructors. Second, the remaining 50% of the funds are distributed to the Formula One organization and shareholders. Third, the top 10 Formula One teams share 23.7% of the Formula One prize money total. Fourth, all teams receive traveling costs from Formula One. Fifth, the constructors receive 23.7% of the prize money, based on where they finish in the constructors' points table at the end of the season. Sixth, Ferrari receives an additional 2.5% as a result of their long-standing relationship with Formula One. Seventh, the team that finishes outside of the top 10 receives $10 million for taking part in the competition. Eighth, the top teams receive their cut from the Constructors' Championship Bonus Fund. One important thing to note here is point 7. The team that finishes outside of the top 10 receives $10 million for taking part in the competition, meaning that the team that would finish 11th or possibly 12th would only receive $10 million instead of the guaranteed $17.1 million or higher for the constructors' standings. This could be a reason for the lower teams to keep Andretti out, but still, some team bosses think otherwise. McLaren CEO Zak Brown described Michael Andretti's quest to join Formula One as a very compelling proposition, backed by Cadillac and General Motors. Andretti has bolstered its case for entering the grid in the aftermath of FIA President Mohammed Ben Sulayem's announcement that the governing body intends to open a tender process for prospective new teams, announcing a couple of weeks ago that its entry would be as part of an alliance with GM brand Cadillac. But its plan appears to face resistance from existing F1 stakeholders. Brown and Andretti are business partners through the Australian supercars outfit Andretti Walkinshaw United. And Andretti stated earlier this week in an interview with Forbes that Zak has been very supportive of the team's ambitions to enter the grid. However, while McLaren was initially supportive of Andretti's ambitions to join F1 last spring, Alpine, which through Renault would supply the prospective team's engines, and which Andretti mentioned alongside Brown as a party willing to do whatever it took to help his team be accepted, is now believed to be the only team actively in favour of expanding the grid to accommodate Andretti, with the other 9 requiring further convincing. Teams are also urging that the $200 million anti-dilution fund, which any new entrant would be required to pay, be greatly boosted, meaning that the current teams on the grid seek more compensation to battle the dilution of all the prize funds. When asked about the Andretti bid in light of the team's aspirations to collaborate with GM, Brown was more appreciative and overtly enthused than Mercedes and Williams peers Toto Wolff and James Vowles had been when addressing the projects on last Friday. But he stopped short of saying it should absolutely be allowed in. While McLaren and Andretti have a solid relationship, and McLaren is generally supportive of the F1 grid expanding, It's recognized that Andretti and any other newcomer must comply with all F1 and FIA procedures. McLaren is also reported to agree with other current teams that a $200 million entry prize must now be significantly increased. The Andretti names got such a rich history in multiple forms of motorsport, said Brown in a session with selected media at the Mexico City E-Prix, where McLaren was making its Formula E debut. Michael and I are partners in a supercars team with Walkinshaw, also a great history in motorsport. GM is an awesome OEM that we race with in IndyCar, and I think he's put forward a compelling proposition, and I think it shows the growth of Formula 1. We haven't had a new team in a long time, since Haas, and so it's just great to see Formula 1 attracting new markets, new teams, new sponsors, new partner bases. In the last few years, we've brought on Google, Goldman Sachs, the Ciscos, the Dells, the Coca-Colas, kind of who's who of corporate brands. I think it's great to see they want to join the sport. I think he's put together a compelling team. Andretti claimed in his Forbes interview that by getting GM on board, the team had satisfied the only box we didn't have checked when we were working on our entry previously, and added, "We're willing to follow every procedure that needs to be done." Existing F1 teams are concerned about a lack of detail, such as where Andretti's cash is coming from, how much of it there is, and what GM will contribute financially or technically. Once the process is open, this material must be included in any official bid, although F1 teams will not have access to it. But some of it is bound to leak out anyway, as most of the time happens. But to make sure that all the teams know what's going to happen, it has been suggested that Andretti could deliver their idea to all parties at an F1 Commission meeting. Asked if this was something Andretti could do to strengthen its claim, Brown said, "I'm not close to what the bid process is, since we're in. I know he's," talking about Andretti, "working closely with the FIA and Formula 1. This tender process hasn't happened in a while, but I think what he's doing is bringing forward his brand, his reputation, his partners, and making the best presentation possible. The FIA and Formula 1 will go through the process. I think there are other entities interested, as Stefano Domenicali commented on. So I'm just excited that there's this excitement of new teams that want to join Formula 1. I think that talks a lot about the health of the sport. And the same thing here in Formula E. A couple of manufacturers went. We've seen in all forms of motor racing, manufacturers come and go. What's great is when a couple leave, how quickly another couple come in. And I think that talks to the demand and health of motorsport in general in the moment we're in. Long may it continue. Mercedes Formula 1 team manager Toto Wolff has softened his attitude on the likelihood of Andretti joining Formula 1. Conceding the team's tie-up with General Motors brand Cadillac is definitely a positive and a statement. Mercedes CEO Toto Wolff stated last summer that any expansion team would have to offer value to the sport, stating, "Andretti is a great name, but this is sport and this is a business, and we need to understand what it is that you can provide to the sport. And if an OEM or a multinational group joins F1 and can demonstrate that they're going to spend X amount of dollars in activating, in marketing, that's obviously a totally different value proposition for all the other teams." Now that Andretti appears to have accomplished this by teaming with GM brand Cadillac, Wolff has softened his stance and concedes that partnering with an OEM is a major accomplishment for Andretti. Cadillac and GM, that's a statement. Certainly them joining forces with Andretti is definitely a positive, Wolff said. It gives it another angle that may or may not be beneficial for Formula 1, but definitely nobody would ever question GM's or Cadillac's pedigree in motorsport, and obviously as a global auto company. New Williams team principal James Vowles, who joins the Grove company after years as Mercedes chief strategist, underlined that F1 has to learn more about how Andretti and Cadillac want to contribute to its growth. "We're always open to the sport growing, but the truth behind it is the sport financially needs to become more and more successful. Whoever joins in that environment needs to bring with it effectively the growth that is required in order for everyone else to be in a better position, or at least a neutral position. And I think it's been the statement from the outset, from the beginning. There are a lot of lovely things about Andretti and about Cadillac. It just needs to have a good understanding of how it will grow the sport, in what way, and what the growth will be. Do you think Andretti will join the grid in the coming years? And is the prize money being distributed fairly? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.